You know, people often ask me, Morgan, when did it all begin for you? And I smile, not because I have a clever answer, but because they expect the moment to be a spotlight, a stage, a line in a script that changed everything. But the truth? It wasn't like that. It began in the quiet years. In the long, invisible stretch of time when no one was watching. When the applause hadn't come yet. When I was just another man doing what he could to keep the dream from slipping through his fingers. I was well into my 50s before most folks even learned my name. And I'm proud of that. Because those early years, all that waiting, all that working, they taught me something most people never learn. That greatness is not about when something happens. It's about whether you're still willing to believe it can. That's why I tell this story. Not to reminisce, but to remind. To remind you, yes, you, that the race isn't over just because the crowd grows quiet. That dreams don't come with expiration dates. That your best years don't have to be behind you just because someone else's clock says so. You've got something they can't see, time still ticking in your heart. Now, I know there are mornings when the body moves a little slower, when the mirror shows more wear than you remember. But that's not decline, that's depth. Those lines on your face? They're maps of survival, of wisdom, of stories worth telling. And I promise you this, the world still needs what you carry. You've lived, you've loved, you've lost, and through it all, you're still standing. So why not build something now that your future self, 10 years from today, will thank you for? That's what I did. I didn't rush. I didn't give up. I followed a rule that kept me grounded, hopeful, and steady, even when nothing made sense. And I'm going to share that with you. But first, I want to leave you with this. You are not too old. It is not too late. And the next chapter might just be your most beautiful one yet. So take my hand. We're just getting started. There came a point in my life, somewhere between frustration and quiet surrender, when I realized something important. Fast success isn't always real success. And more often than not, it doesn't last. I was a younger man then, but already older than most folks chasing the dream. I'd see actors land their big break in their 20s, plastered across magazine covers, celebrated like gods. I'd watch them shine for a season, and then vanish. Gone as quickly as they came. And I used to wonder, why not me? Why not now? But somewhere in those silent years, the years of waiting rooms and whispered prayers, of disappointment and dogged determination, a new thought began to take root in me. What if this wasn't failure? What if it was foundation? That's when the 10-year rule found me. Not in a book. Not in a classroom. But in the steady rhythm of life itself. It's a simple idea, really. Whatever you're building, your craft, your character, your dream, give it 10 years. 10 years of steady work. 10 years of showing up, even when no one claps. 10 years of growth that may not be visible, but is real just the same. You see, I stopped asking, how fast can I get there? And started asking, who will I become if I stay the course? That one question changed everything. I remember walking home one night, having lost yet another role to someone younger, flashier, louder. I was tired. Not just in my bones, but in my spirit. And I asked myself, Morgan, can you do this for another 10 years without being seen? Without the world noticing? And you know what I said back? Yes. Because this is who I am. This is what I do. The 10-year rule isn't a shortcut. It's the long road. The honest road. The one where rewards come not in flashes, but in layers. And those layers, they're what give a life its depth. I didn't rise quickly. But when I rose, I stayed. Because what I had built wasn't a moment, it was a life. I've seen this truth play out beyond my own story. I met a man who opened a hardware shop at 58. For 5 years, it barely stayed afloat. But he kept showing up. Kept sweeping the floor, remembering every customer's name. By year 10, he wasn't just running a store. He was holding together a community. That's what time does, if you give it your trust. So I ask you, what dream have you put on pause because it didn't bloom in a year? What passion did you bury because the world didn't cheer? What if it just needed more time? What if you just needed more time? The 10-year rule doesn't promise ease, but it does promise depth. And when you reach the end of those 10 years, you won't just have a result. You'll have a journey. One that shaped you, tested you, and taught you more than any instant success ever could. I don't regret the wait. Not one step of it. Because time, when paired with purpose, becomes something powerful. It becomes legacy. Before the world knew my name, I spent a long time in the shadows. Now, most people only see the chapters that made it to the screen, the roles, the awards, the voice that became something recognizable. But if you turn back a few pages, you'll find a different kind of story. A quieter one. I call it the wilderness. Not because it was wild, but because it was silent. It was that stretch of life where you wonder if anyone's ever going to hear you, or if your voice is just going to echo into nothing. Back then, I took every job I could get. Theater work that barely paid the rent. Background roles no one remembered. I was a dancer, a script reader, a man with a dream and shoes that wore thin faster than the money came in. I worked in offices, in transit lines, and once in a tiny bookstore where I spent more time reading the shelves than selling them. I still remember the dust on those pages, the smell of worn leather bindings, and the quiet, gnawing ache that whispered, "You were made for something more." But nothing came quickly, and no one promised it ever would. Every audition was a maybe. Every, "Thank you, we'll be in touch," felt like a small goodbye. I'd walk home rehearsing lines, only to forget them the next morning, replaced by another opportunity, another hope. And yet, I kept showing up. That's what the wilderness teaches you. Not how to sprint, but how to stand. How to keep your back straight when the world doesn't notice. How to build something inside yourself while everything outside you stays still. It's in that stillness that I learned my most important lessons. How to listen. How to wait. How to hold onto something no one else could see but me. There's a kind of strength you develop in those years. Not the kind they write headlines about, but the kind that anchors a life. The kind that says, "I'm still here, and I'm still becoming." You know, we don't talk enough about the value of invisible seasons. The ones that don't sparkle, don't make noise, don't bring applause. But I promise you this, those are the seasons where your roots go deep. And when the storm comes later, you'll be glad you planted them. So if you're in a season like that right now, a quiet one, an overlooked one, don't despair. You may feel like you're wandering, but maybe, just maybe, you're growing. And when the time comes, you won't just rise. You'll rise with substance. You'll rise with soul. You'll rise with a story that's real. Stop, stop, stop. Before we continue, I want to take a brief pause. Let me know in the comments, where are you watching or listening from? And have you ever experienced something similar in your own life? A moment when you realized something had to change? If this story speaks to you, I invite you to subscribe. There's more to come, and I'd be honored to have you on this journey. Now, let's continue. In all my years, through every stage, every set, every season, I've come to believe one quiet truth. There's no such thing as too late. Now, I didn't come to that belief by reading books or listening to speeches. No, I learned it from the people I met along the way. Ordinary people who carried extraordinary courage. People who refused to let the clock write their final chapter. Let me tell you about one of them. Her name was Celia. She was 62 when I met her. She had soft hands, a laugh like wind chimes, and the quiet confidence of someone who had seen some things. Celia had been a schoolteacher her whole life, 38 years of chalkboards, packed lunches, and kids calling her Mississippi. But what she never told anyone, not even her late husband, was that she used to paint. Oils, mostly. Still lives and river scenes. She gave it up after college, traded it for what she called the responsible life. Then, after she retired, she walked into a second-hand store, picked up a $3 brush set, and said, "Well, let's see if I still remember." And just like that, her second life began. I watched her fall back in love with color. At first, the paintings were stiff, like muscles waking up. But with time, they bloomed. She told me once, while mixing blue and gold on her palette, "Morgan, these hands may be older, but they're wiser now. They feel the world better." She didn't paint for galleries. She painted for herself. And that was beautiful. Then there was Samuel. He was 74 when he finally published his first book. He had spent most of his life fixing cars in a small Arkansas town. Grease-stained shirts, radio humming in the background, coffee always a little too strong. But Samuel had stories in him. Big ones. He'd write them on notepads in the garage between oil changes. After his wife passed, he found himself alone with time, and no more excuses. So he took all those scribbled pages from the toolbox, typed them up, and mailed them, envelope after envelope, until someone said yes. I still remember his grin when he held that first copy. "You think I waited too long?" he asked me. I said, "No, Sam. I think the world just caught up to you." These people, Celia, Samuel, they weren't chasing fame. They were chasing fulfillment. And they remind us of something we all forget. Patience isn't passive. It's power under control. There's a quiet kind of strength in beginning again when most people have stopped trying. In refusing to let your age dictate your potential. These were not people of excuses. They were people of endurance. And if they could begin at 62, Or 74? Why not you? What would you start today if you believed the time wasn't lost, only ripening? What might come alive in you if you gave yourself permission to bloom again? I believe in the late bloomers. I always have. Because blooming late still means you bloomed. So here we are. We've walked through the wilderness together. We've sat with the silence, met the late bloomers, and learned what it means to move slow in a world that won't stop spinning. And now, it's your turn. Because this story, it was never just about me. It was about you. About the part of you that still wonders, still hopes, still aches for something more. Let me tell you something I know in my bones: you're not done. If you've still got breath in your lungs, a little spark in your chest, and even the tiniest bit of courage, then you're still in the game. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need a grand plan or a perfect start. All you need is a willingness to begin. Or begin again. You see, the 10-year rule, it's not just a mindset. It's an invitation, an open door to possibility. A quiet promise that if you stay faithful to what matters, time will meet you halfway. And I know what you might be thinking: 10 years is a long time. Yes, it is. But 10 years are going to pass anyway. So the real question isn't will time go by, it's what will you do with it? Will you write that story you've been holding in your heart? Will you pick up the brush, the instrument, the phone, the dream? Will you forgive, love, rebuild, reconnect, start? Because you can. And maybe, just maybe, the person you become over the next 10 years will look back and say, "I'm so glad I didn't give up on myself." I've seen it happen, in my life, and in the lives of those who chose patience over panic, vision over noise. And I believe it can happen for you, too. Don't let the mirror fool you. Don't let the calendar decide your worth. You are not your wrinkles. You are not your missed chances. You are not your age. You are your possibility. You are your next 10 years. So if you take nothing else from this story, take this. It's not too late. You're not too old. And the world still needs what you carry. Now go on. Plant something. Water it. And let time do what it does best. Grow it into something beautiful. If this story spoke to something in your heart, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever had a moment in life when you felt like it was too late, only to realize it wasn't? Have you experienced your own version of the 10-year rule? Share your story. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. You matter more than you know. I truly believe in every one of you watching this. If you'd like to hear more stories like this, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. That way, you won't miss the next one. Wishing you a meaningful, peaceful day. And if you've listened all the way to the end, leave this phrase in the comments: "I'm still in the game." That way, I'll know you're walking this journey with me.